So in this pose, we're going to work with the earth and the wall to really help you feel and understand the connection between the heel into the sit bone, into the sacrum, up through the spine and into the skull. So what you'll want to do is first lay down on the ground, check and make sure that you have the sacrum completely flat on the ground. If you have to come further away from the wall to get the sacrum on the ground, that's okay. Just check and make sure that it's flat there on the ground and that the back of your heels come to the wall. So with the sacrum flat on the earth, heels into the wall, you're going to take the back center part of your heel and press it firmly into the wall and then up to the ceiling. And see what happens to the legs, to the sit bone, and into the sacrum as you activate your heel bone. Take a few breaths, observe. And then we're going to use a belt to help us deepen that sense of traction and separation, using the pressure of the belt in this little spot called the magic point of the foot. I'll explain to you where exactly that magic point of the foot is here in just a moment. So first you'll want to have the belt nice and long. It doesn't have to be a yoga belt, just any kind of firm piece of material. And you're going to place that right in between the heel and the arch of your foot. Okay? And then you want to be able to expand out and away with the ball of your foot out through the toes. There's a really important spot here right behind the arch of the foot in front of the heel, and we really want that to open and separate so then you can feel that space move up through the skull. So placing that belt right there in between heel, arch of the foot. Take the belt, straighten your arms out all the way. And check and make sure that you've got the shoulders down away from the ears. Slightly bend the elbows. Pull the belt down so then you can feel the pressure as you press up into the belt. And you're not just going to press up into the belt, you're going to expand. So you're going to expand the heel bone away from the belt into the wall. At the same time, expand the ball of the foot out through the toes away from the belt. And keep pressing up through that external edge of the foot, up through the internal edge of the foot, right? That entire line between arch of the foot and the heel. And see what happens as you continue to press up through the foot. As you rotate those thighs in, see what happens to the internal organs. Observe. Keep observing that rotation of the internal thigh as you press the sit bone to the wall and connect the internal groin, that point of your pubic bone, up through the internal ankle, through the internal part of your heel. Keep pressing out towards the belt on the external edge of your foot, but at the same time, see if you can get the internal edge of your heel aligned with the external edge of your heel. See what happens as you connect that all the way down into your legs, the pelvis, into internal organs, and into your breath. Take a few more breaths here. Next step, we're going to repeat all these same actions, but in Supta Upavista Konasana with your legs separated. So you're going to take two belts, and you're going to place a loop on each foot. And again, check and make sure you're on the center heel. It's really common that the feet will want to rotate out. So again, connect to that center heel, press into center heel, and pull that center heel away. Pull the center heel away by activating external edge of heel and internal edge of heel. Pull them away and get both sides of that heel even and aligned. Take a few more breaths, observing that connection of foot into ankle, down into knee, into groin, into pubic bone. And how that then connects into sacrum and into internal organ. We'll then take a small loop on each belt and place it into each foot. Similar action that you did before in Supta Dandasana, right, with one belt. So you're going to, again, grab both belts with both hands, slightly bend the elbows, open up through the clavicle bone, lengthen down through the shoulders, lengthen up through the neck. Keep your sacrum flat on the earth, sit bones into the wall. Pull those belts down to help you press your heel bone away. Check and make sure that you've got that heel bone. So you've got the heel bone even on the external and internal edge. It's really helpful to think about you're taking the internal heel and you're trying to pull it further away than the external heel, because that's the one that usually wants to turn in, and that will help you line up and even both heel bones and then help you connect and lengthen all the way through the leg to get more space through the pelvis and through the groin into sacrum and sit bone. Take a few breaths here and keep noticing that sense of separation, of traction, of pulling the heel bone away from the sit bone as you keep pressing sit bone into wall, sacrum down into the earth. Relax the belly, pull shoulders down and away. Easy, deep breath. And then we'll pull those feet back in and continue on to the next pose. Here we're going to continue the work on the ground. Working with the earth is really useful because what it does is it checks and makes sure that you do not sit behind the sit bones when we're opening the pelvis. So here we're going to start off in a kind of supine pigeon pose. You're going to take your right knee, bend it up to 90 degrees, and take your left hand, grab that foot from behind, and then your right hand is going to come to the knee. With your left hand, this is going to act like the belt, right? So again, we want to feel the internal edge of your heel pulled forward as you press out through the external edge of your heel. So you have a nice even edge behind the arch of the foot in front of the heel bone. Keep pressing that knee with the right hand. Make sure that your left foot is firmly pressed into the wall, and then take that right sit bone and pull it away from the torso. Keep pulling that sit bone away from the torso as you keep pressing the knee and pulling the foot in. You should feel a lovely stretch happening around the hip joint, perhaps into the IT band. If you feel any tension around the groin, it's because you're closing the front hip. Pull that sit bone away. Feel yourself rotate the skin of the thigh out to help you get more space around the front edge of that hip to create more space around the waist and more space for your internal organs and breath. Take a few more breaths here. And then we're going to change and we'll do the same thing, other side. So we're now going to take our left foot, bring that up, bend it out to 90 degrees. So you're going to bend that left knee out to 90 degrees, press into it with the left hand, and you're going to take your right hand and grab the outside edge of the foot. Really rotate the skin of that left thigh out and around, okay? As you rotate that skin out and around, away from the torso, you should feel that sit bone being pulled towards the wall. Create space through that front hip, the front groin, with the movement of the skin of the thigh and the movement of the sit bone. Now we're going to get deep into that hip joint by pulling that foot forward. So you're going to pull the foot in towards the torso as you keep pressing the knee out and away. Check and make sure that you have your right foot active as well. Press that right foot into the wall and heel bone down into the earth to check and make sure that you aren't closing the opposite hip either. Really try and maintain that foot at 90 degrees. It is common that it will want to drop down. If you start to drop the foot down, you won't have the same angle and you won't get the same opening and space through the hip. Take a few more breaths here. Really deepen that curve through that hip, opening that space for the internal organs and for your breath. And then let that foot come down. Take a few breaths here. Observe what that does through the pelvis, what that does down through your feet. And more than anything, check and see what happens to your breath up through the torso and skull. Next pose we're going to come into is Supta Hastasana. Again, we're going to continue with this work on the ground because it's really useful for helping us maintain the sacrum aligned without going into the lower spine as we open the pelvis. So as we're here in Supta Hastasana, check and make sure that you have your feet pressed firmly into the earth. Your heel bones come down to the ground. And again, press through external edge of your foot, press through internal edge of foot, slightly rotate heels out, and then interlace your thumbs and pull those thumbs away. You're going to keep pulling those thumbs away as you keep pressing heel bone into ground. Slightly press external heel out as you press all the way through the internal edge of that heel. So you should notice a slight rotation of the thighs as you activate these feet. And as these thighs rotate, see what happens to those internal organs. You should feel a sense of sinking, of emptying out through the belly. So you feel that breath moving up around the lungs, up through the left and right side. So space through belly, space through internal organs gives you lots of room and space for your breath, which that is the whole purpose of asana, is to help you create a deeper and better breath, which creates a deeper and better vehicle for prana. And we're going to change the cross of the thumbs. Pull those fingers away. Press those heels into the wall. Make sure that you don't bring the shoulders up into your ears. You're still bringing shoulders down away from the ears. You're straightening out the elbows, but you're challenging those thumbs. You're trying to pull the thumbs away from one another. At the same time, you straighten the elbows, pull fingers away as you press heels into wall, down into the earth, rotating thighs in by evening out the left, the right, the inside and outside of your heels. Noticing that rotation, that internal rotation of the thigh bones, to help you empty out that space, that pelvic cavity, the internal organs. Take a few more breaths here in Supta Hastasana. Notice that space for your breath. And then we'll move into the next pose. So in this next pose, Supta Parangustasana, we're going to need 2 blocks, one on either side of the hips, and a belt, okay? We're basically going to maintain the spine nice and long, sacrum moving towards the wall. But now we're going to add this lifting of the leg and then opening of the hip joint. So you're going to place that belt into your right foot, into that little magic point of the foot between heel and arch of your foot. Start off here with your knees slightly bent. With your knees slightly bent, you're going to press that sit bone towards the wall. Take that calf muscle and press it up through the heel. Pull the quadricep down towards the torso as you press that sit bone away from the rest of the spine. Pull the sit bone towards the wall. Keep pulling that sit bone towards a wall. If you can't get awareness of that, you could place a block just there right behind the sit bone and press that sit bone towards the block and maintain that connection of sit bone towards the block as you keep pressing heel bone up to the ceiling. Activate that heel. You should feel a lovely stretch and connection of sit bone all the way through heel bone. At the same time, you create space through that front groin, through the front hip crease. If you're not active through the leg, you won't get that space. So again, that's this idea of pressing the femur bone towards the wall, lifting the kneecap up. At the same time, you press calf out through heel and expand out through ball of foot, out through the toes. Take a few more breaths here. Notice that sense of space and extension. And then we're going to take that block, place it back on the outside edge of that right hip, and we're going to move into a lateral Supta Parangustasana. You're going to take that belt and place it into your right hand, and then your left hand is going to come out into a cross, palm of the hand on the ground. So now with your right hand holding that belt, you're going to bend that right elbow. That right elbow is going to support that arm, which is going to then pull that foot away. Slightly bend that knee. Slightly bend the right knee. Pull the sit bone away. Press out through the calf. Lift the kneecap up. Keep pressing out through that magic point of the foot. Expand heel back. Expand ball of foot forward. And don't forget that left leg. You're still pressing out through the wall, down into the earth, and rotating through that left thigh. And feel that lengthening of the left thigh at the same time you're opening up through the right inner thigh. So this is your abductor, right, on your inner thigh. Pull pubic bone all the way out through inner heel. Keep pressing that heel bone out and away. At the same time, you press the femur bone towards the wall to create space around that groin, around the internal organs. Take a few more breaths here. Notice that sense of space on left and right side, making sure that your sacrum is flat on the earth. You're not popping up on the opposite shoulder, and you're not popping up on that ASIS bone either. And then we'll go in and we'll do the next pose, Supta Parangustasana, 3. So you're going to pull that foot back up, pull it in, and you're going to change hands. So take your left hand now, grab the belt. Your right hand is going to come out into a cross, palm of the hand on the ground. Slightly bend that knee. Pull the belt down, press the knee up. And that's going to give you the control to move the sit bone away from the waist. Pull that sit bone towards the wall. Again, if you can't feel the awareness of that sit bone, if you don't have the perception of that sit bone, bring that block to the sit bone and then really connect that bone to the block. Do not lose the connection of sit bone to block. Take a breath, and then you're going to start to drop that right leg down to the left side. Maintain that awareness of sit bone to block to wall. That shoulder on the right side will want to pop up. That's okay. Take a breath and pull that right hand away so you get both shoulder blades flat and separated on the earth. Pull the shoulders down and away from the ears. Relax the internal organ by activating that leg. Take a breath here. Press into the belt, making sure that the left elbow is on the ground. Use that left elbow to pull the shoulder out away and keep that shoulder away from the ear. Press through that heel so you can straighten your leg without closing that hip crease. Keep pressing. And then next step is we're going to flip that left foot down. So then the pinky of your left foot is on the ground. Keep pressing that foot into the wall and don't lose that sense of space around internal organ. Take a breath. Bring your breath up through the ribs, up through the clavicle. As you exhale, maintain that structure of your rib cage nice and open and see what happens through the waist, through the internal organs as you exhale. Keeping sit bone moving towards wall, pressing out through the right heel, and still maintaining that breath moving up along the left and right side of your rib cage. Take a few more breaths here. And then lift that leg back up, pull it in, and then exhale and let that leg come down. Notice a few breaths here, the difference between one side and the other side. How releasing that hip changes the connection and sensation down into your foot, up into your sacrum, spine, shoulders, and perhaps into your skull. Do the same thing, other side. Place that belt now into the left foot. Grab it with both hands to start with. Again, if you need to, you increase the perception of that sit bone. Bring a block just behind that sit bone and press that sit bone into the block. Keep pressing sit bone into block. Press calf up into heel. Press that magic point up into belt. Expand through the ball of the foot out through the toes. As you keep trying to press the back of that calf muscle up through the heel, you're going to activate your quad and pull that knee up. So you have forces in opposition here. Your calf muscle extends out through your heel. Your quadricep is going to come and activate to pull your knee up. And at the same time, you're going to pull that sit bone away from the hip. So you really get space through those internal organs, which creates more space for your breath. Take a few breaths here. Keep pressing sit bone to block, block to wall, heel to ceiling. Pull that belt down to give yourself some more traction to deepen that stretch. Again, don't lose the awareness of that internal, external edge of your heel. Press a little bit further from the internal edge to get both sides even. And then you're going to take that block and you're going to place it onto the outside edge of your left hip. This is coming into a Supta Parangustasana 2 or a lateral Supta Parangustasana. Press through that heel. Slightly bend the knee. Bring that sit bone towards the wall. Keep bringing that sit bone towards the wall. Take a few breaths here and really feel that internal action, that internal movement of the entire femur bone moving far away from the rest of the torso, really opening up the entire hip joint. Now, with that nice and open, press internal thigh, so that space from the inside of your pubic bone all the way out through the inside edge of your heel, activating that kneecap, and start to straighten that leg. Don't forget your right leg. Keep pressing down and out through the right leg to make sure that your right hip does not pop up. You want it to be flat on the ground. So both left and right side of that sacrum are flat and even on the ground. And then we're going to exhale, pull that leg back up. And we're going to come into the next pose, which is our Supta Parangustasana 3. You're going to change hands. So now, bend your knee. You're going to take that belt now with your right hand. Left hand comes onto the ground. And you're going to start to drop that left leg out to the right side. Keep your knee bent. Keeping that knee bent will help you get more awareness and control of that sit bone. Pull that sit bone away. Keep pulling sit bone away as you keep pressing out through the heel. You'll notice if you don't activate that heel and press into the belt, it's a whole lot harder to control the movement of that pelvis. So this is why we're connecting heel bone up to belt, expanding through external, internal edge of heel to help you create more space around the pelvis. Now we're going to move into this a little bit deeper. Turn that right foot so the pinky is on the edge of the ground. Press in through heel, out through wall, and keep straightening through that left leg as you keep pressing that sit bone towards the wall. If you can't straighten your leg out all the way and maintain the space through the hip, maintain the space through the waist, don't worry about it. Keep your knees slightly bent and just keep pulling that sit bone away. Eventually that leg will straighten out. We don't want to close the space around the torso. Exhale, bring that leg back up, pull it in. Exhale, bring that leg down. Again, observe, feel. How does that feel now around both left and right side of your hip? How does that feel through the sacrum? That inside cavity of the pelvis, moving up through the diaphragm into your breath, into the sternum, the clavicle, skull. And we move into our next pose. So this pose I like to lovingly call the Screaming Pigeon. This is a really great pose to help to release tension through the lower spine by stretching the front quadricep muscle up into the psoas. Now it's important the placement of the pelvis in this pose. So first, check and make sure that you have your left knee pressed firmly up into the wall, not 2 centimeters away from the wall, not 5 centimeters. You want to have the knee right up into the wall so you don't bring pressure onto the kneecap. So with that correctly placed, check and make sure that your left heel is just to the outside edge of your left hip. And you're going to take that foot, you're going to take your big toe and pull that foot up, pull the big toe up so you get the front anterior part of your ankle firmly pressed into the wall. Now, you could start off with your hands on a couple blocks. If you find that you can't bring that opposite foot forward, don't worry about it. You can keep the knee on the ground and eventually, and very quickly actually, you'll be able to bring that foot up. This is a very grateful pose. With practice, you'll notice a quick improvement. So with both hands on the blocks, I want you to feel your sacrum coming down, the coccyx moving forward, the pubic bone lifts up. So that's going to create this sense of space through the internal organs and keep that movement of the bones of the pelvis, right? So your sacrum moves down, your coccyx moves forward, your pubic bone moves up as you start to walk those hands back, bringing your sacrum back to the wall. Don't think about bringing your lower spine back to the wall because that could create a deep lumbar curve, which will actually end up hurting the lower spine. So it's the sacrum comes back to the wall, down to the ground. Now your opposite foot, your right foot here, is pressed down into the earth. Again, we're doing that same activation of the foot that we did before with the belt. Press down into heel, expand expand out through the ball of the foot, through your toes, to help you give control of that sit bone. You're rotating that thigh out as you drop that sit bone down to create space through the hip joint on the right side, and at the same time you keep pressing that coccyx forward, lifting up through the pubic bone, drop the shoulders down and away so you can get more space through the left anterior part of the groin of the pelvis. Now here it's very important to relax the breath. I know this can be really intense, especially if it's the first time that you've done this. Relax the breath, relax the jaw. This is working not just with your quadricep, but also with your deep psoas muscle. If you have any tension through your jaw, any tension through your breath, that will directly translate into that psoas muscle, which will also pull on your lower spine. So really, you can open up your jaw and just let it go, release that jaw, which will help you to release down into the psoas. Take a few more easy breaths here. Shoulders down away from the ears, making sure you lift up internal organ, lift up through sternum. Don't pop back, you want to lift up. It's a lengthening upwards. And one more breath. And exhale, come out. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So now we've got our your right knee pressed back into the wall. Again, check and make sure that you have that knee pressed right up into the wall, that you're not on the knee cap. Make sure that you have the foot just on the outside edge of your hip. And then you're going to take the hand on your right foot and pull that foot up, pull the big toe up, straighten, stretch through the front anterior part of that ankle, press it into the wall. Hand comes back into the block. Check and see what's going on through that left hip. Press down into the foot. Expand through that foot. Heel bone out through external edge into ball of foot, out through toes to drop that sit bone down. Drop that sit bone down. Lift and lengthen through the anterior part of the torso. You should feel a whole lengthening of the spine as you drop shoulders down away from the ears. And then with your breath, with awareness, you can start to walk those hands up and back. Now, really observe your pelvis, the bones of the pelvis. Sacrum moves down. Lengthen through that sacrum. Bring the pubic bone up. Drop the sit bone down. Don't think about bringing your back to the wall. Think about bringing your sit bone to the ground and then your sacrum to the wall. If you think about just bringing your shoulders or your skull back to the wall, again, you'll go into your lower spine. That would completely be counterproductive to the pose. If you feel like you could bring your hand up onto your knee and still maintain the movement of the bones of the pelvis. Sacrum down to the ground, sit bone to the ground, pubic bone up, lifting internal organ up. Dropping shoulders down and away, release the jaw. Easy, deep breaths to help release those deep psoas muscles that connect femur bone into lower spine. This is all about internal action, internal awareness. Don't lose contact with that foot. Keep your foot active to help move that sit bone down and lift and lengthen. Pubic bone up through sternum, shoulders down and away from the ears. Keep lengthening through that sacrum. And exhale, come out. Move into our next pose. So here we've done pigeon on the wall. So now this is what I like to call our resting pigeon, or some might call it a sleeping pigeon. So the most common error in this pose is that the sacrum is misaligned, which is of course going to create problems up through the spine, into the skull, as well down into the groin and into the hip. So we're going to use some height here to help us check and make sure that we've got our sit bones aligned along with our sacrum, so we're able to lengthen through the spine and keep our breath even on the left and the right side. So everybody's going to have a different height. Here we've got 3 blankets. You can use a couple blankets, you can use some blocks, you can use a book, but grab whatever height you need so then you could feel that sacrum line up. Now, part of the process of getting that sacrum to line up is the same thing that we did on the wall on pigeon, right? So we want to take our left foot here. So we have our left sit bone on the blankets. Our left foot is on the ground. We're going to press that foot into the ground to help us pull that sit bone back. Now that right foot that's on the ground is going to help us first press the coccyx forward, lift up through the pubic bone, and lift and lengthen. If you feel like you still can't get much lift, you could take another blanket and place it just below the ASIS bone. And you're going to use that blanket to help you lift those internal organs, lift that ASIS bone up and away, which will give you more space and more capacity to be able to, now you can see here, right? She can really start to line up that sacrum a lot better now that she's creating more space through the anterior part of the pelvis. So check in your own body, see what's going on, see if you can pull that sit bone back a little bit further. Lining up left and right sit bone, and then using your hands to help you pull rib cage up and away. As you keep pulling rib cage up and away, you'll be able to align that sacrum a little bit more. Now, this is nothing rushed. Everybody's going to have a different way that they're going to enter. You might be really comfortable here and you can go straight ahead and lay forward. If not, don't worry about it. It's more important to feel the alignment of your sacrum, that space opening through the anterior part of your pelvis, rather than laying forward and collapsing down into the ground. If it's available to you, if you feel like your body will allow you to, you could start to lengthen out and over that left leg, making sure your left leg stays at 90 degrees. And then you could support your skull either with a block or with a book or something if you feel like you have any tension through the neck. So pressing your hands down into the earth, you're going to pull those rib cages away. So pull the rib cage away by walking those hands forward, using the elbows to pull that whole thoracic spine forward, lengthening out and over that left leg. And still pull that sit bone back and down. Sit bone back and down. Left sit bone back and down. Lengthen over that left leg. Take that right leg. Press back through that heel. So you actually are going to stretch and pull that femur bone back as you take the right ASIS bone and lengthen it forward. If you feel like you have control over that hip now, you can flatten the top of the foot down on the right side into the earth. Press down through the top part of that heel. So the same part of the anterior part of the anterior part of your ankle that you had done on pigeon on the wall, you're now going to do here on the ground. Press down through the anterior part of that ankle to help you maintain control over that right hip and keep pulling that sit bone back on the left side. Keep letting your breath help you open and release that block through the hip. Take your time. And then slowly, when you start to come up, press the fingertips down into the earth. If you can't get your fingertips into the earth, grab a couple more blocks to get yourself more length. And as you keep pressing fingertips into the earth, this is the same action that we did on the wall. Lengthen that sacrum down into the earth and pull that pubic bone up. We'll move into the same thing, other side. Now you've got your right foot out to 90 degrees. With your right foot out to 90 degrees, make sure that you're supporting that right sit bone with whatever amount of height that you need to make sure that you get your sacrum aligned and both sit bones aligned. You can grab a blanket here, place it in between ASIS bone and the torso, and you're going to lengthen up and over, up and over, up and over that blanket. So you really get length through the spine and space through those internal organs. Use your fingertips to help you pull and lengthen that entire torso up and over, up and over, up and over. Left leg. Pull that heel back, and then you can drop the top of the foot down, press down through the anterior part of that ankle so that that left hip doesn't pop up. You still want to drop and lengthen down through the left hip as you keep taking that right hip and pulling it back so you get both sides of the sacrum aligned. Lengthen, 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 lengthen out and over that blanket. Use your fingers, use your hands, use your elbows. Really connect the internal rib cage to your elbows and pull that rib cage forward so you get more length, you get more space, not just through the spine, but also all the way down into the sacrum, into the pelvis. Make sure that you aren't bringing your shoulders up into your ears. You have your skull supported with the block to help you open through, not just the sternum, but also through the trapezius, through the back of the neck. Take a few more breaths here. Really lengthen. You should feel a sense of separation between your foot, your left foot, all the way out through your fingertips. You should feel a sense of separation from your sit bone up into the torso. Let that open with a bit more awareness. Still press down through the left anterior part of your foot on the left side to keep control of the pelvis on the left side without losing that sense of separation on the right side, pulling sit bone back. Keep lengthening forward with the help and use of your elbows. Activate those arms to pull the rib cage forward a little bit more. Rotate the elbows down and around to the ground to open up that space around the neck through the sternum, opening the clavicle. And we're going to stay here about 3 or 4 more breaths. Really letting all of those hip connectors release. And then slowly start to walk those fingers back up. Same thing. Press the fingertips down into the earth to lift up, not just through the sternum. You want to lift up from the inside of the pubic bone. If you do this, you'll avoid going into your lower spine. If you think about just bending back, most often what you'll end up doing is just compress the lower spine. So avoid doing that. Lift up from the inside of the pubic bone, lengthen down through the sacrum. At the same time, you're going to take that ASIS bone, press it forward and up. And then we'll slowly come out of that pose and come into another way to come into this pose. If you're really struggling with maintaining the alignment of the sacrum, oftentimes this happens because the hip that is not supported on the blankets just wants to keep collapsing down, or you might not have the perception necessary to feel that sense of separation of the top of the femur bone from the ASIS bone. So what we're going to do here is to help you feel this. This is an alternative to help you feel this, or a student feel the sense of separation, is take another block or another couple blankets, and you're going to place it just below the ASIS bone. So you're basically just right at the head of the femur bone, okay? Now, with that block just below the ASIS bone, right where the head of the femur bone is, now you'll have a better sense of where you need to move to separate those bones. You're going to take that bone, press it down into the block, and then pull that ASIS bone away. Move into our next
Aquí
pose.
vamos a trabajar
So
con
this is
Trikonasana.
Trikonasana.
Hay un montón
There
de maneras
are
diferentes que uno se puede
tons of
entrar en
different ways that you
Trikonasana.
can
Ahora porque
practice
estamos
Trikonasana.
centrados en la pelvis,
It's an
vamos a
excellent
trabajar con
pose
un
for the
cinturón
entire body, but
y
because
la
this is a
pared.
specialized
Entonces, con un cinturón,
video on
lo
the
que vamos a
pelvis,
hacer
we're
es
going to
asegurar
work
que tenemos el
specifically
cinturón
focusing on the pelvis, obviously.
en la
So you're gonna
ingle,
take a
¿vale?
belt.
Que estás
You're gonna make
pasando
sure
por el
that
espacio
belt
entre la
comes
cabeza del
just
fémur y la
below the
costilla,
ASI
que
bone.
tienes
It's
la
gonna come
lengüeta
around and
mirando
connect
hacia
to the
atrás.
opposite
Y eso
foot.
ya tiene que
You wanna check and
conectar
make
con
sure
el
that it
punto
connects
mágico
just
del
right
pie
where the
opuesto.
external
Ahora
edge of
mismo
that heel
estamos
is, where we've been
trabajando
working
con la
with
pierna
all
derecha,
class. So that
con el
magic
cinturón
point
en
between
la
heel and
ingle.
the arch of your foot. Here you can see a little bit better that that belt is placed right there in that hip crease, just below the ASIS bone. Now, to help you deepen that hip crease, you're going to take that thigh and pull the skin down and back. Okay? Down and back, down and back, down and back. At the same time, take that ASIS bone, pull the skin up and away, up and away, up and away. So you really get that belt firmly placed, deeply placed into that space between ASIS bone and femur bone. Now, the tongue of the belt needs to be looking down towards the ground, not up towards the arm, because that's not the direction we want it to go. We want it to go towards the ground to really move that sit bone down and deepen that hip crease. So try that out a few times until you feel that you've gotten that hip crease as deep as it can go. And then you're going to take that left hand. So we have the belt there in our right foot. You're going to take that left hand, bring it down to the sacrum, and that thumb is going to find the left side, right where the sacrum connects to the other ear of the pelvis. And you're going to lengthen that down. Use the elbow to open up through the torso, and with your right hand on the wall, you're going to walk that hand up and lengthen up and over that belt. You're going to actually try and get that ASIS bone on the other side of the belt. That right foot, don't forget to expand through that foot. Press down through the external edge of that heel. Expand up through the pinky, through the entire ball of the foot, out through the big toe. Lifting up through the arch, press down, take the calf muscle, pull it down, and then start to lift that kneecap up and start to straighten that leg. You could take that left hand and pull that belt to help you deepen that hip crease a little bit more. If you feel like you can't go much further, that's okay. Wait and just let the pressure of the belt help you open up that hip crease a little bit more. This is a work of time and breath. And then once you're done with that, we'll do the same thing on the other side. So again, make sure that you have that belt passing back through the magic point of that foot, right behind the arch of the foot in front of the heel, that it's placed just below the ASIS bone. And again, you want to pull the skin of that thigh down and back. And you're going to take that ASIS bone, you're going to take those internal organs, all that skin, and pull it up and away, up and over, up and away. And take the belt, and you're going to tug that belt so you get to deepen that hip crease. Now the hand on that, your left hand is on the wall. You're going to walk that hand on up and really pull that ASIS bone up and over, up and over, up and over that belt. Press that foot down into the earth. Activate heel. Extend out through pinky. Open up the ball of that foot. You're going to pull the calf muscle down by pressing down into the heel, and keep pressing down into the heel. Pull that belt to deepen that hip crease, and very slowly, with control, you're going to start to straighten that leg. As you straighten the leg, don't lose contact with the earth. The movement of straightening your leg needs to come from the pushing down of the foot into the earth. Keep pressing into earth to lift up through kneecap, keeping that leg nice and strong. If you lose the strength and connection of that leg into foot, it's really common to hyperextend your knee. So really pay attention to that connection of foot into sit bone. Open up through the torso. Keep lengthening up and over that belt, up and over that belt. This is now really work on internal action. Feel the inside of that ASIS bone lifting up and over the belt so you get length. Okay, we don't just want to collapse down into the hip. We want to pull ourselves up and away, up and over, and get lots of length through that hip joint, which of course will translate into greater length through the spine, which will give you more space through the internal organs, which will give you more space through your breath. Take a few more breaths here. Keep lifting internal organ up to help you lengthen down through sacrum. And then we'll move into our next pose. So this next pose we're going to come into is called Ardhanachandrasana, our half moon pose. This is a great pose to help open up the hips, especially that internal connection between internal heel up through internal groin, right around the pubic bone. But you have to make sure that you're doing it right. So we're going to use a chair and the wall to help us maintain stability in the pose. You're going to start off and check and make sure that you've got a 90-degree angle between your right foot that's on the ground and your left foot that's going to be on the wall. You're going to start off with both hands on the chair. So just hang out here for a few breaths and really press underneath the foot. Bend that right knee. Press down into the heel. Pull the calf down. Lift the kneecap up. And keep opening and expanding through that foot as you start to straighten that leg. Keep the knee slightly bent, but make sure you have the action and activity from foot into sit bone. Now, you're going to take that left hand, bring it onto your sacrum, start to rotate around. You're going to rotate that foot as well until it is parallel to the ground. Okay, so now check that foot that you have on the ground, your right foot there. Still press. Let's bend that knee again. Bend the knee, press down into heel, drop, lengthen down through calf, and lift up through kneecap as you start to straighten that leg. You should feel resistance. You should feel strength as you start to straighten that leg. Bend the knee one more time. Press down through heel, connect external edge of foot, rotate through thigh, start to straighten that leg. And again, bend the knee. Press down through heel, expand through foot, press down to the ground with the calf up through the kneecap. Keep rotating through the thigh to open up through that ASI bone, just like we did in Trikonasana. And with that, you should feel strength and action through that straight leg, your right leg. Now we're going to do the same thing on that top leg. Press into that heel, and using that heel, you're going to pull that femur bone back and at the same time rotate and open that hip. Up, up, up. Open that hip up. Rotate and press that coccyx forward. Or I should say, lengthen the coccyx to the wall to pull those internal organs up. So you should feel that your femur bone on that leg that's on the wall is pressing back and at the same time being pulled down. And then we'll change and we'll do the same thing other side. Hands back on that chair. Bend that knee. Now, with that knee bent, again, press down into foot, rotate through the thigh, and start to pull that sit bone away, just like you did with pigeon, just like you did with Trikonasana, just like you did with Supta Parangustasana. Keep that knee slightly bent. Bring that right hand now back to the sacrum. With that right foot now on the wall, you're going to press into that heel to help you lengthen through the sacrum. And activate that thigh muscle to help you open up through that right hip. Now bend that left knee. Press down into that foot, into the heel. Expand back through the heel. Extend out through the ball of the foot, out through the toes. Lengthen through the calf. Lift it through the kneecap and start to straighten that leg. Straighten the leg, straighten the leg, straighten the leg. Bend the knee one more time. And again, press down through the foot, expand through the foot. You can think about rotating through that left thigh up into sit bone to help keep that knee active. One more time. Press down into that heel, expand through the foot, lengthen through the calf, lift up through the kneecap, rotate, pull that sit bone away. And you should feel that kneecap firmly supported between the thigh muscle and the calf muscle. Keep lengthening through that sacrum. Lengthen through that sacrum. Pull the shoulders down away from the ears. Lengthen internal organs moving up towards the skull. Feeling yourself float up and over that left leg. That's why it's called a half moon pose. You should feel like you're floating like a half moon in the sky. And then exhale and let that foot come down. Next, final standing pose, which is actually a modification of a standing pose of Paravita Trikonasana, our twisted triangle pose. We're going to actually do this on the ground because it will help you control a little bit better the movement of the pelvis. So taking your left foot, bring it towards the wall. Your heel's going to be on the ground. The ball of your foot's going to be on the wall and at an angle. Your right leg is going to be on the ground, or your right knee, I should say, will be on the ground. You can start here with your toes tucked under to help you keep a little bit more control over that pelvis. And you're going to have that back foot at a slight 45-degree angle. Okay, your fingertips will be on the wall. Now, with your fingertips on the wall, you're going to press your fingertips into the wall. Press that heel on the left side down to help you, again, feel that rotation of the thigh to pull that sit bone down to the earth. So a similar thing that we just did in our half moon pose in Ardha Chandrasana. If you feel like you're hyperextending your knee on that left side, which is really common for people who are a little more flexible, you can use a block to help support the base of the calf. And that will help you keep from hyperextending that knee as you start to straighten the leg. So with our leg now supported, our fingertips on the wall, let's check and see if we have our sacrum aligned. So take a few breaths here and observe. Observe if you've got that sacrum aligned, if you can spread that sacrum, separate it from one side to the other by activating those legs. Okay? You're going to press that left foot down into the earth to pull the sit bone down, at the same time opening up that left side of the sacrum. Your right leg is going to be active. You're going to absorb the right hip to help you activate and absorb the sacrum. Now you're going to take that left hand, bring it back to the sacrum. Left hand is on the sacrum to help you maintain the awareness of the lengthening of the sacrum and the alignment of the sacrum. With your right hand on the wall, you're going to walk it over so it's in front of your left foot. Now, don't even think about twisting just yet. Think about lifting and lengthening. Fingertips on the wall. Press into the wall. Lift up, lift up, lift up. Feel those ribs being pulled up. And as that sacrum aligns and the lengthening of the ribs keep pulling up, 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 then you could start to think about twisting. Pull the shoulder blades away from one another. Use your elbows to help you separate the shoulder blades. Drop the shoulders down away from the ears so you get lateral width. Okay? There's a couple things going on here. We have the lengthening of the sacrum, the lengthening of the spine moving upwards, and then this lateral movement of the ribs out to the left and to the right. Keep that coccyx pressed forward to help you lift up through the front of the ASIS bone. So this is like a similar thing that we did in pigeon. We're basically combining everything that we've practiced before now in this one complete, very complete pose. So lengthen through the sacrum, lift up through the pubic bone, feeling that stretch through the front of the quad up into the ASIS bone, the separation of your shoulder blades, the lifting through your sternum. And then we'll turn around and we'll do the same thing, other side. So again, place the other foot now on the wall. You could support that leg with a block so you don't hyperextend your knees, to help you also support and maintain the width and separation of your sacrum, that space and the front part of that hip, fingertips on the wall. Now you're going to take your left hand. You're going to keep that left hand on the wall. Your right hand's now going to come back to the sacrum. Lengthen through that sacrum. Keep lengthening, lengthening, lengthening through the sacrum with your left hand on the wall. Line that left hand up with your foot that's on the wall. And with those hands, press one hand into the sacrum, press one hand into the wall, and then lift up. Feel that ASIS bone lifting up. And as the ASIS bone lifts up, your ribs will also move up. So you get lots more space to help you move in the rotation without going into the sacrum. Try and keep that sacrum aligned and allow the twist to move up from the internal organs, up through the sternum, keeping separate both left and right shoulder blades, keeping clavicle bone open, shoulders down away from the ears. Don't forget that back leg. Keep the coccyx pressed forward. Keep that pubic bone lifting up so you get a lovely stretch into that quad, into that psoas muscle, just like we did before on pigeon on the wall. Take a few more breaths here. If you need to relax, you can relax, but just see if you can stay here a little bit longer. If you need to reduce the twist a little bit, that's fine, but just try and perceive all these internal actions, the action of your foot, the pelvis, the separation of the shoulder blades, the lift through the sternum, the lengthening through the neck. And then release and come out. And our next pose now, we're going to be moving down to the ground. It's called Upavista Konasana. It's also known as butterfly pose or cobbler's pose. So here, what we're going to do is work with the wall, a block, and a blanket. Okay. Now, we want to really check and make sure that we're on the anterior part of both sit bones, because if you're not on the anterior part of both sit bones, you're going to be tucking those sit bones under, which means you're going to be creating tension through your sacrum and up into your lower spine. And this can actually create problems, not just into the lower spine, but as well as into the left and right groin when you start to open and stretch those inner thigh muscles. So here, bring the balls of your feet together. And with that block right up against the wall and you on the block, you're going to really grab the flesh of the buttocks and pull it back and out until you could feel that you are right on the anterior edge of both sit bones. Now, with both sit bones firmly placed on that block, you should automatically feel the entire spine lengthening up. If you don't feel that, grab another block. There's absolutely no shame in getting more height to check and make sure that you have your sit bones firmly planted into that block. Now, with your sit bones firmly planted onto the block, I want you to lengthen that sacrum down. You're going to press the sacrum down, press your shoulders back, and at the same time, the back of the skull also goes back into the wall. This will check and make sure that you aren't popping your diaphragm forward as you start to open the inner thigh. So with the balls of your feet together, hands on your knees to start with, just observe and see what that feels like to have your sit bones basically nailed into the block, sacrum into the wall, lifting up through the sternum, shoulders back into wall, skull into wall. So with that, now let's see if you can start to work from the anterior part of the torso. Lift, find the inside, see if you can perceive the inside of that pubic bone and lift the inside of that pubic bone up. As you keep lifting the inside of that pubic bone up, see if you can connect the inside of the ASI bones as well and lift up and lengthen. There's basically two strings you could think about on one side and the other side of your pubic bone. And it's going to lift and lengthen up through the inside of the sternum, up through the clavicle. Now with both hands on both knees, again, you're going to rotate those thighs out. And you're going to rotate the skin of the thigh out, press down into the legs to lift through the sternum. Pull the shoulders down away from the ears. By pressing down into the legs, this will give you greater ability to lift and lengthen the entire torso, the entire rib cage up and away. You want to make sure that you're not popping the rib cage forward and you're not leaning forward. This is why we have the wall. So we have the wall here to help us pull the anterior part of the ribs back, and at the same time we press our hands down into the legs to lift up. Let that breath deepen. Check and see if you have any tension through the internal organs, through the belly, through the diaphragm. Let that tension go. Let the lift of the torso help you to relax all of those internal organs. Check and see that you're not bringing tension just below the sternum either. That's a really common place that many of us bring tension to. Let that open. You can imagine the left and right rib cage opening out to the left and to the right to create more space, not just in the sternum, but also below around the diaphragm. Relax the jaw, relax the neck. Easy breath. Deep internal perception and attention. Relax those groin muscles. Check and make sure that you've got your toes connected. It's really common that your feet will start to open. It's not wrong, but it's just a different kind of stretch. So keep the root of the big toes connected. If you're unable to do that because of habits in the foot, or if you find that your ankle really hurts as you do this pose, a really great modification is to make a kind of mini triangle with a blanket. So there's a little space in between for your feet, right? So you're going to fold one corner and the other corner, but leave a little space in between both corners of the blanket so you can place the edges of your feet into that space. And that's automatically going to keep the root of the ball of your foot connected as well as your heel. Again, pull those sit bones back if you feel like you've come forward. And then, once again, keeping those feet connected, you're going to drop down through those knees, rotate through those thighs, relax, 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 left and right groin, and keep relaxing left and right groin as you lift up from the inside of pubic bone, lift up from the inside of ASIS bone. Keep sacrum and spine and shoulder and skull press back into the wall. Take a few more breaths here, making sure you aren't bringing tension into the belly, tension into the breath. If your breath is relaxed, body and mind will also relax. We'll move into our next pose. Our final sitting pose will be Upavista Konasana. And just like Baddha Konasana, we want to check and make sure that we're sitting on the anterior part of both sit bones. The most common error and cause for injury in this pose is sitting incorrectly over the sit bones. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you are sitting on the anterior part of your sit bones. Grab more blankets if you're not there. Grab 4, 5, 6, however many you need to check and make sure that you're on the anterior part of your sit bones. You've pulled those sit bones back and away from one another. If you find that you're hyperextending your knee because you have too much height, place a couple blankets underneath your knees. And once again, double check and make sure that you've got those sit bones pulled out and away. You've got your feet pressing out and down through the heel bone. So this is what we did at the very beginning of the class. We were laying down, right? But now we're sitting up. And you're going to press the center part of that heel down into the ground to pull that heel away from the pelvis. Okay. I want you to take your hands and press them down behind you. Press down into the earth, lift up through the torso. Press out through the heels, press out through the heels, press out through the heels. And as you keep pressing out through the heels, it's going to separate your sit bones even more. And it's the pressing down and out through the heels that's going to bring the pelvis down to the earth. Let's do this one more time. Press your fingertips down into the earth. You're going to slightly lift up off the blanket, press down and out through the heels, down and out through the heels until those sit bones once again come down to the blanket through the movement of your heels. Let's place the flesh of the buttocks in its correct place, right? So we're going to separate the flesh out to the left and to the right. And with your hands, place the hands right up there at the deep crease of both left and right hip. Press down and out through the skin into the femur bone. Keep pressing down and out. So it's a rotation up into that deep groin muscle. And keep pressing out through that heel. Check and make sure you aren't flipping that foot back, just like we did like we were on the ground, right? We were laying down with our legs up on the wall and opening the legs out to left to the right. We want to keep the center of that heel pressed down and moving out. Now, a really great way to help you do this is to really connect to that internal heel, into the internal ankle. Press down into center heel and then find the internal ankle, internal heel, and pull through that. Pull through it, pull through it, pull through it, pull through it, and really feel the internal edge of that heel connect all the way up into that deep groin into pubic bone. And just stay there. Let that open. There's no need to go further than this. If you're already feeling a really deep stretch, that's okay. Let your breath help you open, maintain the integrity of the pose. Really check and make sure that those feet are what's going to help you open and separate, create width through that pelvis. Width through the pelvis automatically will translate through a longer and straighter spine, which of course will translate into a deeper, better breath, which of course will result into better functioning of the mind. Now with those legs active actively separating from one another through the action of the heel. Your fingertips will come back to the ground. Press your fingertips down into the ground and lift up from the inside of the pubic bone, lift up from the inside of that ASIS bone, and keep lengthening down through the sacrum. With your fingertips on the ground, your elbows will be slightly bent. And use the elbows to help you lift up from underneath those armpits, to help you lift the whole rib cage, the whole thoracic spine up and away. So this action that we did at the very beginning of class of interlacing our thumbs and pulling those fingertips away to feel that lifting of the rib cage is the same kind of action we need to feel here, but sitting down. With our fingertips on the ground, we're going to press those fingertips down to help us keep that lift and length, lift and length, lift and lengthening of the whole thoracic spine up and away from the pelvis. Relax the groin, relax the belly. Keep your legs active, connecting continuously through center of heel, internal heel up through internal groin. Relax neck and jaw. Relax the shoulders down away from the ears. And just let that internal space between left and right groin open a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then if you're able, if it's available to you, we'll take either 1 or 2 blocks. This will depend on how many blankets you have that you're sitting on. In this case, she's sitting on 3, so we're going to use 2 blocks just because of height. If you're only sitting on 1, or if you're sitting on the ground, 1 block should be enough. And you're going to press that block into the pubic bone. Press it into the pubic bone. And as you press into the pubic bone, again, feel those feet, feel the legs moving out and away from one another. Lengthening out, lengthening out, lengthening out. Using your hands on the blocks to again help you bend the elbows and lift up through that sternum. Now, pull the block in. Lift up and over. Feel that pubic bone trying to move up and over, up and over. Your ASIS bone moving up and over, up and over, so up and over. Feeling your ribs moving over those blocks, over the blocks. So you don't curve through the spine, but you lengthen through the spine. Still pull those blocks in as you keep the elbows open. Let your breath help you guide this pose. Deep breath in. And with that inhale, allow yourself to float up and over those blocks as you continue to pull the blocks in. Keep those elbows separated. Rotate from underneath the armpit so you really allow the arms to help you lift and open that rib cage. If the rib cage is open, even though we're specifically working with the pelvis, it is not disconnected in any way, shape, or form from the rib cage. So by keeping those arms active, we're able to allow that rib cage to float and lengthen, which creates more mobility and more space through the pelvis. Take a few more breaths here. Don't force it. Let your breath guide you. See where you have that resistance. Let that resistance go in your observation and in your breath. Continuously checking to see what's going on through the center part of your heel, the interior part of your heel up into the pubic bone. This idea of pressing femur bone down. And then inhale, come up. Remove the blocks. And we'll go into our final pose. Final pose of the class will be Supta Dandasana into Supta Parangustasana. So this is just like we did on the wall, but now you're not using the wall. See if you can do the same actions without the help of the wall. So with that belt in between the heel and the arch of the foot, right, and that little magic point of the foot, I want you to press up into the belt. Through those heel bones, imagine that you have like a big rock, right? Something really heavy that you're pressing those heel bones up into. By pressing those heel bones up into that belt or into an imaginary rock, let's say, that's going to help you flatten and iron that sacrum out onto the earth. Notice the difference when you actually really place firmly that sacrum onto the earth, and at the same time you press and lengthen up through the heel. Keep pressing, lengthening up through the heel. Slightly bend the elbows to help you open up through the torso. Drop the shoulders down away from the ears. Breathe. Press those femur bones away from the torso. So again, you keep space through that interior part of the pelvis. Sound familiar? Keep pressing sacrum down into earth, and without losing that connection, without losing that sense of direction of continuously flattening and ironing that sacrum out into the earth and keeping that space through the interior part of your pelvis, you can very slowly, with control, start to pull those toes in closer towards the skull. Don't lose the connection of sacrum to the earth. Keep thinking calf to heel, kneecap to hip. This way you feel this sense of separation between the femur bone and through the heel bone. We have them moving in opposite directions to help create more space through the pelvis. Keep pulling that sit bone away. Press that femur bone away from the torso. Take a few more breaths here. Relax the belly and allow the breath to move laterally up along the left and right rib cage, emptying out the pelvic cavity, emptying out the belly. So there's lots more space for your internal organs, lots more space for your breath. One more breath in. Feel that breath come out to the left, to the right, to the front, to the back, not into the belly, but up into the lungs, up into the rib. And come on out of the pose. Stretch those arms up and over the skull. Stretch out through those heels. Lengthen through that sacrum. Take a few breaths here and just observe. One of the largest parts of yoga is observing what happens as you go into your asana practice. What happens as you come out of it? What are the effects on your breath? What are the effects on your mind? Take a few more breaths here to observe. And then we're going to relax those arms down. And come into Shavasana. So laying flat on the earth with enough support underneath the skull to check and make sure that your forehead doesn't drop below the chin. So with the skull correctly placed, now check and make sure that you have both feet and legs separated from one another, that you've opened the sacrum from one side to the other so that's open and flat on the earth. And then check and make sure that you have both left and right shoulder blade separated and shoulders moved away from the ears. Palms of the hands looking up towards the sky. Now, with the skeletal system correctly placed, take a deep breath in through the nose. Opening the mouth, exhale, and let it out. If you notice any tension through your lower spine, first separate the sacrum a little bit more. And if you still notice tension, place a bolster or a pillow underneath your knees. And again, deep breath in through the nose. Opening the mouth and let it out. One more deep breath in. Fill up all that new space you created. Opening that mouth and just a nice easy sigh out. Inhale, exhale, easy through the nose. Observing, releasing, letting go of the toes. Moving up into heels, into ankles. Releasing left and right leg and really noticing all those connections around the pelvis. Relaxing internal, external thigh. Checking to see what's going on through the pubic bone. Noticing if you can feel the difference between the left and the right side of the pubic bone. Let them open and release, moving all the way up into left and right groin, into the pelvic floor. Notice if there's any tension around the anus. Allow that to go. Relax. Notice left and right hip, femur bone. Let that disconnect from the pelvis. Easy, open pelvis, easy, open sacrum. Let that sacrum flatten out and spread a little bit more. And with that pelvis nice and open, relax all those internal organs. Relax the skin across the belly. And allowing that to open and release. Notice what goes on through the diaphragm. Allow that whole diaphragm to open, relax. Sigh into relaxation. Noticing the separation between left and right shoulder blade. The expansion through the sternum, the separation between left and right clavicle bone as shoulders drop away, down through elbows, out through the fingertips, allowing those arms to float away as the rest of the skull disconnects, letting the neck lengthen, the throat open, release the jaw. Softening cheeks, lips, and tongue, letting the eyes sink back into their sockets, relaxing the eyelids, eyebrows, up into the forehead, through the top of the skull. Breathing in and breathing out.